As you already know, Hearts of Iron 4 is a game about conquering other nations and enslaving the whole world to your liking. You see, as a self-proclaimed democracy guardian, I am not for that. I prefer to keep freedom, liberty and justice in the form of defending my nation and then annexing all of yours. And I have made such campaigns a bunch of times as I do democracy A to Z on my channel. And today, in yet another episode of it, we will try to survive as the land of Czechoslovakia. You know, the country that in spite of all the preparations, they were betrayed and surrendered to Smittler, who still invaded the rest of Europe. And today there will be no surrendering. So let's dive into this already. And as I love the Czechs so much, I don't love their old and bland focus tree. That's why I installed a mod that actually makes them interesting. Also, I am not so sure how this is gonna go, as I did randomize everyone on the globe, so we might get the most peaceful campaign, or everyone around us will want to rip our balls out. So 1st of January 1936, I take a look at the gigantic focus tree that the mod presents to us, and I actually sit in front of my screen for around 5 minutes trying to decode where is democracy and how should I play it. Ultimately, I decide to stick with the famous Edvard Benes because he is just so unique, and also the democracy is non-negotiable focus icon is so damn cool. As we are in such a spirit of being a democracy, I saw that army leaders had different sympathies, so as every high-ranking personnel should do, I put only the ones who were supporting my ideology, without even looking at their other traits. You know, you could be Sun Tzu in Czechoslovakia 1936 and you wouldn't get to command anyone unless you were a democrat. I also saw that there was a whole next game I needed to play under the decisions tab, because Czechoslovakia was so multi-ethnic during the 30s, you had to accommodate everyone and basically suck their dick so they wouldn't revolt. And if that wasn't enough, inflation was also a thing, which turned out to really bite my ass in the future. Back to the minorities, I decided to look the most on the German well, because Adolf Hitler maybe? Especially that he did go his historical route and changed my plans about the army composition. The drunkards have very good tanks that Skoda produces, and if they would have gone ahistorical, I would have put them to good use. In this scenario, I had to go fully hedgehog and disbanded the tanks to maybe come to them later. Spoiler, I never did, because I'm way too lazy. In the focus tree, there was a not only choice in snapping elections or keeping Edward in power, there was also choice of joining the allies or leading the faction of my own. I was kinda tempted to go to the allies to to push for Togo and get Lužice, but it was to be determined by the cuck Neville, although that was in the far future, possibly in other fucking galaxies, so I stuck with more earthly manners, the fucking Germans in my lands. You know, if I could, I would just execute them, but sadly I can't. But I could reach a compromise with other ethnic group, the Slovaks, and translate, put all the Slovaks into jail, and thus the Slovak opposition debuff was gone. I also took a glance if this was the glorious mod of deporting the Hungarians, portraying the beacon of democracy, but sadly it was not. And after playing the extra game in the decisions, I checked if the United Kingdom was still democratic, but I decided to change the course. So I knew already that I had to create my own faction, and looking at what was happening in Romania and the Turks, I had a genius plan. I can only say that the course of history was about to be convoluted to the point of no return. The Romanians just had to hold on for 105 days longer, and this plan would also work as the Balinium Stalinium chose to shoot himself by choosing the 5th column. After 105 days of waiting, Romania joined, and not only they joined, but we also got supported by the Yugoslavian brothers. But from the start there were a bunch of problems I did not think of. First, my front. I had way too many troops for 2 tiles in a mountain, and I couldn't get to the Romanian supply. And the next bad thing, the looming threat of Adolf Hitler on my back,
waiting to pull his pants down and do the work.
The good thing, it did let me take the focus declare mobilization, which I believe threw me into war economy and extensive conscription. And then I tried to push, but you can only imagine how that went. So I improved relations with Austria, as there was a focus to penetrate through Hungary and Austria and make way into Yugoslavia. Also at the same time, the Turks evaporated from the earth, but I still hosted them as exile government, because as we say in Czechoslovakia, mój domov je twój domov, or my house is your house. And I also did it so I could steal the mighty Turkish fleet of 2 ships. Then there came a letter from Austrian parliament letting us know that we could indeed penetrate them, and the borders looked purely disgusting, but it worked. In the focus tree, I decided to go for economy of free market, as there were 2 research slots fairly quickly, and also I still wasn't sure if I should take the aggressive army or defensive one. And since you can see that we are pretty aggressive into Russia for now, but when Painter from the west knocks on my door, I won't be very offensive anymore. And then we started to somehow-ishly kinda push into the Soviet Union, until they crashed and realized they didn't want to be red no more and joined our side. But they spawned like clowns, taking land from Romania, and as Romania was such a bitter fucking loser, they wouldn't get military access from them, and then I wanted to push in, but I fucking couldn't because I had no supply, because I couldn't resupply through them, you get me. Also, in the meantime, you know about the German sidekick Hungary? Yeah, I had a war against them, which I wasn't afraid to use, and made them bite the dust, or rather lick my boots as I released them as a puppet. And after some weird sneaking around made by the Romanians, they did connect the borders and we could actually push with the logistics intact. As the Soviet Union is this giant blob, the war took so long and also distracted me because I forgot to keep a bit of political power to make the Danubian Confederation. So I loaded it back up. I got the PP and started the focus, and whilst popping it and getting further into USSR, the goddamn Ukraine freed itself. Although they were kind enough to let us march through their lands and storm the Red Menace. And as I was on my way to occupy their key cities, I could sense about the year that was currently in the game, 1938. Is this the year of infamous Czechoslovakia getting eaten? Yeah, it is. But looking at it, that Austria is still alive, we might have a bit more time. Although at the same time I'm saying that they did erupt into civil war, so I guess God help you. Even though you're communist and you don't even believe in God. I tried to give them some troops to even join the war, but I just couldn't. As I held on to political power, I finally did the Danubian Confederation, which everyone agreed to, but Romania. They would rather be dishonored and be a bitch to the Danubian Federation instead of just joining it. Well, and then the next step was to annex them and puppet Romania, which needed me to have even more political power. And then the mighty red swords appeared, and the Sudetenland crisis decision popped up. Well, it's a race against time. We still haven't capitulated the Soviets, and the Germans are already plotting against us. The Sudetenland crisis supplied us with some extra decisions, maybe getting extra guarantees, and judging by the countries that could defend us, I wasn't really sure we could get anything. And from the Eastern Front, the Soviets did capitulate, and I got to steal a bit of land. A bit more than a bit, I could say. I basically took the industrial heartland of the Soviets. Just don't judge the border guard I created by doing so. But it does work. Kinda it does work. Since I didn't get any resources from them. And by my mistake, I get some of my land back to Ukraine, but the wind has blown into our sails as the Austria won the civil war. My focus has finished, and I could press the ultimate annihilation button, which instantly gave me 1.2 million manpower and a crop load of factories. And let's not forget that every democratic general was utilized properly. But then was the Munich conference and the painter declaring war on me. But I was surprised to see that the United Kingdom actually backed me up, so I guess this war wasn't going to be so difficult. I think that Smittler's face was adequate to what he felt at this time. When I looked closer on the borders, the crowds were looking very empty there, and I could use the magic arrow button as it was green. Then there was some problems with the Poles on the border as they went into some crazy civil war extending the front line, but with the Romanian troops I stole, I could cover it easily. Day by day I pushed further, and I got to Berlin without any real conflict, and they even sued for peace with the funny Smittler's portrait. And I mean, as I am a respectful democracy, I refused to take said peace deal. I kept on attacking every small village and exterminating every German until they passed out and sued for a total surrender. And the peace deal went semi-fine. I mean, I did get a bunch of their land, and so I can't really complain. On top of that, there was another war I had to finish against White Finland, who, in my opinion, was a bit too white, so I had to annex them. And whilst we were at the topic of war, it never really stopped, as I was in the fight with the remains of the Russian government. But to be fair, I had to complain about this for a bit, because these pricks didn't have any of the big cities anymore. So to actually make them fall, I had to walk into every possible small fucking village and knock out the peasants by throwing cinder blocks at them. Also during this war, the Bebikos demanded Dalmatia from me, and you might call me a coward because I gave it, but I just wanted to have an actual peacetime after the draining years of warfare. And after inflation spiking up to as high as 37% and resistors going to around 66%, the Russian provisional government has even less soul in them, and they decided to capitulate. And of course, I didn't have plenty-led peace conferences, and I was a democracy due to the nerves at the conference table. There was a semi-border guard, but peace at least. I could finally go further into the focus tree and federalize myself, or as you can call it, break my country into 10 different little ones to get some buffs. There was also an election going on in my country, and the last remains of Nazis trying to do something, but I just decision mashed them to death until they stopped. But back to our elections, the minor ethnicities won with majority votes, but I still decided to make a coalition with everyone besides the fucking communists and fascists. And the head of our country was a mysterious Polish man, which caused the Poles to be a little less annoyed as a minority. Well, these times were very peaceful and finally enjoyable. I could breathe for a bit, reform the army, actually make good planes, and you know, actually catch up with whatever the fuck just happened. That we just annexed basically all of the two major bullies of this world. Although there was enough of peace as I wanted to try out the air and ground forces, and it landed on Italy. But some mysterious thing happened. I got spammed with 20 different events saying that some kind of war has begun. You know, at first I thought it was a bug and just ignored it, but you cannot ignore a giant elephant in the room called Denmark snaking into my Schleswig. Yeah, I don't know why, but I got into war with the allies, and that skirmish was about to be a goddamn long one. But before I say how quickly the land battles went in Europe, I want to say that I had the choice of defederalizing myself and annexing my puppets. I willingly chose not to, so I could get even more buffs. But yeah, war with the allies. Ukraine needed only one of my army to go out. Italy was kinda a smooth walk, and then whatever the French capitulation was all about. Like, over there, I am pretty sure the French AI got lobotomized so much as they never moved their actual troops, and I literally just walked into their cities and capitulating them. And the funny thing was that they were still holding on to the disjointed government in 1941. After the titans of Europe fell, it was time for the cleanup of whatever the shit was happening in the Balkans and the Transman countryland in Caucasia. Nothing really to talk about here as they just didn't have enough troops, adding my shit ton of planes on top of it. They really couldn't do much. Then there was the peaceful wartime, as I was waiting for paratroopers and transport planes to manufacture, because I felt like I was doing so much of naval measures.
I wanted to switch it up.
And I also had a shit ton of planes, so you know. And let me tell you, I made the paratroopers a bit stronger than just one fucking paratrooper. They were full 10 with support companies, etc. So the United Kingdom also did not really stand a chance, when tens of thousands of drunk Czechoslovakian dudes appeared from the sky and started shooting them. And we got one of the first peace deals where I couldn't really steal much, but to give Italy their lands. After the peace deal, there was another country in Europe that was in need of extermination, Portugal. And the mad lad paratroopers had enough range to drop onto them, and so they did, killing Portuguese and also making a crazy invasion of Gibraltar. Not a naval one, a real one. Tactics was to not drop everyone at the same time, but to drop them one by one so they could keep on fighting. And I was honestly surprised that it worked, because in my opinion it was such a dumb idea. And as I was on my crusade to purge everyone from Europe, I also paradropped on Africa to maybe do some campaign there. But the letter came in that Mexico joined some faction that was hostile to the USA, and my heart dropped. I sent armies of drunken warriors to America. The obese landers didn't even know from what continent we were, as the Americans know nothing about geography. They thought we were from the Middle East. And this war was a bit long, as the supply in America fucking sucks sweaty ass musty balls, and few of my convoys were being raided. And also the problem was that Mexico had no clue, and it basically had not developed the frontal lobe, as they didn't possess the knowledge of building extra railways or extra supply hubs. And because the game is programmed very well, I couldn't even send my air force to help out. Yeah, the key mechanic of the fucking game being completely neutralized when you fight against someone with someone from another faction. The front was moving further in the west coast and we took more lands there. And then I think they snapped, or they either lost too much manpower or equipment and just weren't able to defend us, or we just got to a place with actual infrastructure and logistics. So the American burger people finally gave up, and successfully I even got some land from them. Sad thing was, the war was far from over. We still had to capitulate Portugal as they were merged with Brazil, and there was the Japanese, which I had a plan on how to take out. That plan consisted of spamming out trash battleships just to get enough manpower out onto the sea, so I could get a naval domination. After butchering the Brazilians, cause let's say it together, they fucking suck, I began set plan consisted of spamming out the battleships, and I ventured west through Pacific Island, hoping to get closer to Japan. One by one, I got to Iwo Jima, and from there, the last naval invasion of this war commenced, flooding the beaches of Tokyo and the nearby cities. I realized I was basically going on vacation, as the fucking Japanese had literally zero troops in their home islands. Like, I know you were fighting in other lands and the war was far from you, but as other fell, you could have produced some extra divisions, right? And not send them into the fucking idiotic Transcaucasia because there was a fucking front line. Anyways, with them falling, I annexed almost everything and get some achievement made by the developer. I was for some reason still at war with the rubber people, which of course wasn't any problem, and I could finally get some condoms. The problem was that South fucking Africa was a major, but they weren't in the war, and I couldn't get a peace deal for some reason, so I had to cheat. Yes guys, I cheated, I fucking had to. I didn't want to wait for them to join the fucking war. It was only made to finish their suffering and my suffering faster. And then when the best looking national focus was finished, it gave me a bunch of war goals against people and even my own allies, which my goal was to finish all these people and then I would call the campaign won. So we budget every one of our allies who wasn't democratic, finished Peru and the other factions. I had to naval invade the little baby Chilean island, and what turned out to not be a desert, I took out China, not last but next last, and I just had to give the land to Manchukuo, because when I saw how expensive it was for me to take it, I just gave up. And the dessert was the Dominican Republic, who capitulated as the last country I had the war goal on. And that did conclude Czechoslovakia campaign. It was pretty weird, I mean, taking out the Soviets by 1938 and Germans basically at the same time. I mean, yeah, it was pretty strong. What can you expect from a mod focused on a country? But as I said earlier, the Czechs have so bland focus tree in the base game, I'd rather shove rocks up my asshole. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time, guys.